Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Nick. Today we're going to talk about low light handheld photography. For those of you who are new to my channel, I am a professional photographer. I've been shooting for approximately 3 years professionally, but I've actually had a camera in my hands for the last 15 or 16 years. I've been actually shooting since high school as a hobbyist. For those of you who are returning, thank you guys again for checking out another video. Now, as we discussed last week, we were talking about handheld low light photography. Now, most of the time, when you shoot in low light conditions such as this, or you're shooting starscapes or cityscapes at night, you're doing long exposure work on a tripod, there's no shake, you get those cool trails. But tonight we're going to talk about handheld shooting. Now, handheld shooting allows you to get photos like this, or photos like this. Now, these were taken at the Dillon Ice Castles in Dillon, Colorado. It is a low light situation where a tripod's actually not allowed unless you have a media pass, and I didn't have one of those because I didn't know you needed one. I actually tried to set up my tripod, but that's a whole nother story, and we will actually do a video on shooting on a tripod, long exposure, all that fun stuff. But right now, we're talking handheld. So the first thing I want to discuss with shooting in low light handheld is your lens focal length. Now, as we discussed in the shutter speed video, which I will link up here, you don't want to shoot at a speed lower than your focal length. So if you have a focal length of 20 millimeters of your lens, you don't want to shoot under 1/20th of a second, or you'll pick up camera shake from your hands. So I was actually using a 10 to 20 millimeter Sigma lens, which is actually the lens that's on there right now, and I was shooting at about 14 or 15 millimeters, so that gave me a range of about 1/14th of a second to 1/15th of a second. I think most of my shots were at 1/20th of a second. And then I had my ISO set at 2500. Now, as we discussed in the ISO video, right there, ISO is the Hail Mary in this situation. Is what made the shoot possible, because I was able to bring my ISO up and increase the sensitivity of my camera. I was able to get these awesome low light shots while still holding the camera handheld. I was shooting at about 5.6, f5.6 to, I think I got a couple shots at f8, just because I wanted that depth of field. Now, I could have brought it down to f3.4 and really let more light in, but then I would have lost my depth of field and the pictures wouldn't have turned out quite as crystal clear as I wanted them, and they're still not completely crystal clear in the full depth of field. And we discussed that in the f-stop video. So my settings generally were about 14 or 15 millimeters, what I had zoomed in on, f5.6, ISO 2500. Now, where things get complicated is when you bring your ISO up too high. You're in a really, really low light situation, kind of like this. You actually might be able to see the dead pixels. They call it noise, or ISO noise, and that's the little sparklies of color you'll see kind of floating around me here and there. And the reason for that is when you jack your ISO up to a really high number, you make your sensor super sensitive. And when it's super sensitive, the dead pixels show up, or the dead pixels capture too much light and it shows up your burned pixels, and it can actually really distort your photo. So a test I like to do before I do a low light shoot is I'll actually put my lens cap on and I'll do a long exposure shot, like 2 or 3 seconds at 4000 ISO, which is actually what we're shooting at right now. And then that photo will show me, yeah, it's pretty noisy at 4000 ISO, so I brought it down to 2500. 2500, I really didn't have any noise, so that's another test you guys can employ. I would recommend, to figure out where your noise is intolerable to you, put your lens cap on and do a 1 or 2 second exposure at 1000 ISO, 2000, 4000, 6400, as high as your camera will go, and then you can figure out where it gets really noisy and you can shoot under that and adjust the rest of your camera settings around that ISO, and that is the manual mode video, which I will link right there. So that's really the basics of low light photography. You want to check your camera ISO to see where it starts to get noisy. You want to use the smallest focal length lens that you can. That way you can really slow your shutter speed down without capturing the motion blur of your hands. ISO is your best friend, and then f-stop is totally up to you guys. It depends on what you want to capture. If you want that really cool portrait look, jack that thing real low. If you want a large depth of field, you know, bring that number up and just go out, shoot, and have a good time. Thank you guys so much for joining me again. We're gonna have a bonus video this week. I have a video of the ice castles themselves that I'm going to edit and upload. So you guys have a wonderful evening. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you guys can see that bonus video when it gets uploaded. And you guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you again. Bye.